Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode on Master Your Mental. We are talking all about depression recovery today. Joining me is my special guest, Kristine Scott. Kristine is the founder of Seattle Conflict Resolution, where she consults with employers on policy, training, and crisis triage for support in nonviolent conflict responses. I'm so excited to have Kristine with us today to not only dive into her personal story, but the work that she is doing with others and what depression recovery has looked like for her and how we can apply these tips into our lives and share them with those that we love. So, without further ado, welcome Kristine to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you. And I can't wait to get into this because as you guys know, I love featuring tips, tricks, solutions for anything related to mental illness, mental health, how to prioritize that. So Kristine is here today to share her personal stories surrounding that, along with the work she's doing. So what I would love to hear from you first. So what motivated you to share your story about depression recovery and what is the story?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. Um, well, one of the things that I've been very graciously gifted with is a long career in social services. So I got to kind of hold space for people who had every form of mental struggle that you could imagine. They were living outside, they were victimized, they were often kicked out of homes because they were lesbian, bisexual, transgender, questioning queer, or they had addiction issues, right? So I'm working with young people who were staying in a shelter that I was running. And so that showed me what it's like to be both vulnerable and survive and reclaim your story because I just met hundreds of young people doing that and they they inspired me. Oh my gosh. Because I'm dealing with like suburban housewife issues and they're dealing with life and death, right? And
Mhm.
um even though my depression was very real, watching their ability to handle that was just like a real wake up call for me. Like if they can climb out of that hole, which looks insurmountable, what am I doing to climb out of my hole? Right?
Mhm.
What am I doing for my own well-being? Because this is not working. I
Mhm.
deserve to actually have some joy in my life. And right now it feels like it's like really far removed and really hard to get to.
Yeah, no, and that's just incredible to hear the experiences that you had in social services, right? And going in and, like you said, helping people who were dealing with all kinds of different things, homeless, addiction, struggles with mental illness, not knowing, the answers or the solutions. And you're there and trying to help and trying to learn more and trying to add value. And then in the meantime, you are struggling with your own set of issues, right? That you
Hmm.
bring up too. And just understanding, like if these people are, pushing through and able to make it through these different things, how can I do that as well? So I love that. And just having that spark inside of you. So that kind of brings me to when you're talking about climbing out of that hole that you're in, what did that journey look like for you when you talk about that?
Well, there were a lot of things going on in my life that I didn't have words for. I didn't know that there was such a thing as situational depression.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had a really close friend who said, it's simply when life is bigger than you can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And, it really kind of took the stigma out of depression because it was like, oh, okay, so this marriage that's not working for me is bigger than I can handle right now. My son being diagnosed with autism, bigger than I can handle right now. Like, I had really good reasons for that hole I was in, but all I saw were the sides of the hole and not the contours, like not the like big picture about like, okay, this is why I'm here. This is
Mm-hmm.
what I'm up against. Um, and I'll never forget, I actually talked to my counselor about decisions I was making about whether or not to stay in the marriage. And my counselor was like, well, I really recommend that people who are clinically depressed not make life altering decisions. And I was like, oh, well, there's some wisdom in that, but I think I'm depressed because I'm in a marriage that's not working for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Wow.
and that's the hard thing about depression is you really don't always know, like, what started this? Why am I here?
Mm-hmm. No, and especially like what was so powerful with that you just mentioned about when you talked about being inside of that hole, right? You're only seeing the sides, you're not seeing the bigger picture and just like the pieces, like you mentioned with the marriage and then your son being diagnosed with autism and having all these things happening, but not knowing how to address that and then being in therapy and getting these different pieces of information. So I would love to hear, like, was there something that stuck out to you or something that you tried, because of course there's all these different things that we can try or things that we can look into for solutions. Was there something that you found that was particularly helpful for you in coming out of your depression and managing that?
I would say it would have to be the young people that
Mm-hmm.
I got to know working at the shelter, just watching their incredible stories of resilience and overcoming some really big obstacles and hurdles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that I saw how possible it was. How, how
Mm-hmm.
even though I couldn't predict anyone's path at all, some people didn't make it out. Those that did just, oh my gosh, they just really floored me and inspired me. Like, wow, it's very possible. And in fact, those of us that aren't dealing with life or and death stuff, in a way, almost have that responsibility to ourselves to do it even more, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
like, wait a minute, what's my excuse? Why would I stay in this dark, deep place longer than I have to?
Yeah. And
I have all these reasons to find joy and to claim it.
yeah, and that's the biggest piece there right there. What you just said is, finding those pieces and those moments to help remember you of those of the joy, right? And those different experiences because, it can also seem pretty easy, right, when you're going through all these things and these challenges to, like you said, dig yourself deeper into that hole. And instead of, realizing that you have these different basic things, whether that's a home or family or different pieces of things that we have to access. So that kind of, something else out of that was really, really cool with what you're doing is you are the founder of the Seattle Conflict Resolution. So I'd love to hear like from you just a little bit about that and how you came
Mhm.
across creating that and just the whole journey. It's super cool.
Oh, thank you. Well, my very first job with homeless young people was
Mm-hmm.
actually an AmeriCorps position. I was getting paid AmeriCorps wages for
Mm-hmm.
running a meal program for homeless young people. And my very first night doing it by myself was completely terrible. Oh my gosh. Absolute chaos. There was about 50 young people in a church basement. My food volunteers were hiding behind this table. They were very afraid.
Aw.
I was very afraid. My purse was stolen. There were fights breaking out all over the place. There was this 14-year-old who just had a big mouth on her and was creating problems wherever she went.
Mm-hmm.
And they had multiple piercings and tattoos and like stuff that I wasn't very familiar with, a culture that I had no idea about, and I was frightened. I was
Mm-hmm.
I was shaking in my boots, and I was thinking, I'm never coming back. $900 a month is not worth this. This does not
Mm-hmm.
feel safe. I mean, I'm kind of a little conflict averse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then this big voice boomed out over the crowd, and it said, "Hey, little bean, knock it off. You're messing it up for the whole burrito." And I just like, what? Who was that? And the whole room got quiet and polite, and everybody's getting along. And I'm looking at this transformation for these young people, and I'm just really curious, like, who are you guys that you can be so accountable to each other?
Mm-hmm.
And that began my journey about understanding street culture and understanding what it means to choose your family, what it means to be accountable to other people for your well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And they taught me things that I never learned growing up, in a pretty isolated Christian household. Like I didn't know half of what they were up against.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that really pushed my boundaries around how to
Mm-hmm.
handle conflict, and who I am. These guys are much bigger than I am.
Mhm.
And they're living a kind of a life or death situation every day.
Mm. And that's
Um,
wow, just to hear you kind of recount that, right? Like those memories of like being back in that. Cause I know definitely relate to you as well. Cause having background myself, working in behavioral health and going into different, facilities and hospitals and clinics and homes
mhm.
and all these things. And, sometimes feeling nervous or scared, like, what can I say? Like, how can you help? Like, are you helping? Are you making a difference? And that's something I love to ask you too, with, especially when it comes to crisis management and resolution, like, did you ever have those moments where you felt like, am I making a difference or an impact? And what did you do to overcome those to really be able to create what you did?
Oh, that's a great question. One of the things you probably noticed in those settings is that your biology kicks in. And when your
Mhm.
biology kicks in, oh my gosh, you can only go two directions, right? One direction is you get big and you try to be like scarier than the thing that's got you freaked out. And then the other direction is you get small and you try to look like, oh, don't worry about me. I'm not a threat, right? You can just leave me alone. I'm over here. I'll be quiet.
Mhm.
Um, and neither one of those works with conflict. They both tend to make conflict worse, right?
Mhm.
They both make the other person feel like, oh, I have to be bigger than you,
Mm.
or I'm not getting through to you. You just totally checked out, right?
Exactly.
So
Mhm.
so I had all of these conflicts that happened on my watch that I had to learn how not to have that kind of big reaction to the biological fight flight stuff. Just like I learned, oh, this is not working over and
Mhm.
over and over again until I kind of got comfortable with conflict the hard way just by screwing up so much.
Mhm.
It's to the point that my little freak out was a lot less severe because oh wait, I've seen it before when people yell at each other and da da da. Like I just got kind of inoculated, and
Mhm.
eventually that gave me the space to start really looking at what is the right response to this.
Mhm.
How can I bring that epicenter of peace into this chaos? And I have to have that for myself first, right? So I got better at de-escalating myself, and then I could actually start de-escalating the people around me. And
Wow.
the sad truth of social services is that we are doing many more things than we have funding to do. And
Mhm.
so that meant I had to have a bunch of volunteers help run my shelter because I didn't actually have the budget to pay staff.
Mhm.
So I was training college students to come in and run the world's craziest sleepover every night of the week with 45 beds of 18 to 25-year-olds, mostly managed by 3 or 4 paid staff members and 12 college student volunteers who were the same age as the people we were serving.
Mm.
So I had to like not only figure out my conflict stuff, but train them on how to do it too.
Wow.
And that's when it really took off because I had to like externalize like, okay, so this is what you do, these are your tools, this is how to lean in instead of like get small or get big, right?
Mhm. No, that's really, really good advice. Because when you think about that, right? Because you think like the common way of when you're trying to de-escalate something, you might think, okay, I need to do maybe this way or be bigger, but not be too much and kind of be more on the quiet side. But I love how you mentioned, especially when you talk about that piece you mentioned of de-escalating yourself to create that peace in yourself to be able to de-escalate that for others. And that's a really good tip too, because especially like you mentioned, when you get into these situations, it kicks into your body of you're having these certain feelings of being maybe afraid, nervous, unsure, you don't know what to say or how to
Mm-hmm.
act. And you're feeling on edge and it's coming out in the way that you're interacting with people. So I love that because especially when we're talking about depression and tips and solutions for that, if you could give, maybe three key things that you do still to this day, right? Because it's still always a journey. You don't do the
Mm-hmm.
work one time and it's great, and that would be awesome if it worked that way. But what you still do to this day to really prioritize that, if you could give me maybe like top three things you do to prioritize that when you are having those experiences with depression, what does that look like?
Well, I think depression for me is like using that language around, okay, this is what happens when the situation is bigger than I can handle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like really looking out for what are my resources in life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you do it really well in your podcast talking about, there's your nutritional needs and there's,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of tackling what you can and can't handle and kind of being realistic about that. Like
Mm-hmm.
all of the places that we lean in and take care of ourselves could be our medical, could be our dental, could be exercise, like could be what we eat. Like those are things that give ourselves the message that I'm worth investing in. I'm worth having these resources on board
Mm-hmm.
at all times because I never really know what life is going to throw me next. And
Mm-hmm.
so even the act of doing things that are good for my self-care, and that's not just pampery stuff, that's just really practical stuff, right? That act is like a contradiction to the message that, oh well, you don't deserve resources, you just need to like cower down and do whatever you need to do. Like no, we, as a depression survivor, I know that that's possible. It's very possible that life is going to throw me a curveball.
Mm-hmm. No, and I love how you laid that out there of especially, when you said giving yourself that message that you're worth investing in, right? And sometimes it doesn't always look like you said, like doing these different things to pamper yourself in these certain ways. Maybe it's just, 5 minutes to yourself to do a meditation or exercise or what you're
Hmm.
eating or, a conversation with someone that close to you or, letting other people know that you're proud of them or, complimenting others and just these small
Hmm.
things and small acts that we do that you really start to say, wow, like I'm happy I'm doing this or I'm happy I did this
Yeah,
today. And it really
yeah.
makes an impact because that's amazing that you lay it out there because you mentioned too, like what are your resources and in terms of
Hmm.
can control and can't control, because that's something that, takes obviously takes years of practice to have the ability to identify it because it can be hard, especially when things are going and we're all so busy and we all have so much going on and we catch, and it happens all the time because even with me all the time, like I still have days where I'm like, oh, like I'll have these different feelings, then I'm like, okay, I'm feeling like this because of this, but what can I do about it? What can I do to make it better? And that's what's amazing because it is really hard, especially when you're dealing with depression too, of you're in that kind of state and you don't know how to look at it in another way that can help you come
Hmm.
out of it. So I love that you feature those different things and things that you've done for yourself to really help you put you in a position to where you can really continue to do the work you do, because something that I know is pretty common in the field that you've been in with social services and these different things is having that burnout and
Yeah,
overworked and like you mentioned doing all these different things and go all these different places, and it can really catch up on your body and cause you to have those feelings of depression, like is this ever going to really make a difference? I'm only one person, I don't know.
hmm,
And
hmm.
that's really the really beautiful thing about what you're doing. So, I'd love to hear some more work of, what you've done so far with Seattle conflict resolution, because it looks like you go into different places and you do different talks on crisis management. So is that correct? Or you can kind of
Yes,
elaborate more on that. I'd love to
right.
hear more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people have very public facing team members that have curveballs and angry, irate people thrown at
Mm-hmm.
them regularly, right? Especially, with this COVID world that we're living in, the pandemic has just been this huge depletion of
Mm-hmm.
our mental health resources. And everybody's on edge. Tensions and hostility is a lot higher, especially in hospitality, restaurants. We're
Mm-hmm.
seeing this really high rates of turnover. People just quitting, saying, I can't deal with irate and angry customers anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I will come in and I will train them how to deal with people when they are at their absolute worst.
Wow.
And you mentioned about, giving somebody a compliment as a part of your well-being. You're actually super smart about that because they have been done so many studies. If we can show up with our best selves, our kindest self, then we are a lot less likely to get hooked into other people's like outrage and
Mm-hmm.
irateness and hostility because we're already in that in that calm, peaceful center. Like, I know who I am, I know what my value is, and I can express that with a smile on my face and kindness in my voice. Even though you right now are at your worst self, right? But I'm not giving you power to pull me into my worst self. I'm
Mhm.
actually holding the container for you to have your tissy fit because we know human emotion, even at its most intense level, is very hard to hold on to it for more than 20 seconds.
Mhm.
And that's true of extreme ecstasy and extreme anger. Like we can't channel that much energy for
Mhm.
very long. It depletes us. It wears us down, right?
Mhm.
And so I just train people like just imagine they're speaking a foreign language. It's all just flowing right past you and you're waiting for them to come down for breath. And that's your opportunity to engage.
Mhm.
It's not about you. One of my biggest clients is the Seattle Space Needle, right?
Yes.
People can be irate.
Yeah.
They have to wait in line to get into a small elevator, and small spaces can be very triggering for some people,
Mhm.
you know, and they have to deal with thousands of people every day, some of whom get irate.
Mhm.
And so we just give them real practical tools. Okay, here's what to do with your body. Here's some, here's a script you can use. Here's some tools that I want you to like see where you're at. There's like basic level conflict, intermediate and advanced level. I give them tools in each one of those levels and just kind of challenge them. Like if you're
Mm.
here, try to get to there. Like try to really get to the point where you can empathize with this person. Think about the last time you were maybe a little hangry and you took it out on somebody you loved, right? Like,
Mhm.
you know what response you needed at that time. Be
Mhm.
that response for this person now.
Wow, that's such amazing advice to especially what you said right there at the end of, to be that for that person in that moment and to have that response. And that's I love that you go in and you actually help with these different places of de-escalating and handling these crises, right? Of what to do and how to say different things because like you said, those feelings can't are very difficult to hold on for extended periods of time, but then those effects can last, right? So when you have that interaction of, being upset or there's especially in hospitality or behavioral health or different places where there's very long lines and things like that. And having this stuff happen where people are upset and they're, angry and it's not a good situation can impact you for probably the rest of your day. And then you take that out on the next person. It's like a ripple effect of like, where it just, it's passing it on.
Hmm.
But, to have that power in that moment is extremely amazing just to be able to say, okay, this isn't a good situation. This person's upset and it's making me feel a certain kind of way. And it's like really not sitting well with me. But what can I say to offer support in that way, but also let them know that I hear them, I understand them. I know, what this experience is instead of just kind of brushing it off and then trying to say,
Hmm.
okay, well, this is what just directing it right to there. I love that you do that because that's I mean, it's such a needed thing, especially in different industries, like you mentioned, where people are just like, I can't do it anymore. I'm done. I'm leaving. I can't because it has that stress level of where it
Right.
puts that on you. And, a lot of people go home and they have families, they have different things they're doing throughout their days, right? And different obligations and responsibilities. And it almost pushes you to a point of exhaustion and the stress level inside of yourself and thinking, oh my gosh, I have to go back to this place again and do this again tomorrow. And I don't know if it's going to get better. And you almost put yourself in the cycle. But what you do is so great because it helps these people, be able to have that tool that you offer, whether it's through scripts or through the tools that you're offering, and giving them those tips and those advice to really take with them into these situations to, be able to come out and not have those lasting effects of where it stays with you the whole rest of the day. So I think that is so amazing. And, something else I want to ask you too is I always love asking everyone this question because everyone always has a different answer. And it's so amazing. And that's why I always sit here taking notes, you guys. I always have my notebook. So I make sure I'm getting everything down to include this for all of you. Everything that we were mentioning today and that Kristine was sharing, not only just from her personal experiences, but also her experience with working with clients, like she mentioned, of, Seattle Space Needle for Seattle conflict resolution. So, of course, I have to ask you, Kristine, what are you doing right now in this moment? If you can give me one thing to master your mental.
Oh, well, you mentioned it earlier, Paris. It's got to be meditation.
Mm, mhm.
As much as I fought it earlier on, I really fought it. I'm like, oh no,
Yeah.
I don't want to be one of those meditator people. Um, just having that quiet place to sit. And for me, it's typically outside in the natural environment. I just need that peace
Mhm,
and that space. When we're stressed, our brain works at a certain level, right? That's our sympathetic nervous system. And it's not a good brain. It's not a kind voice. It's not a good inner voice to have. When we have that space, that expansive, there's nothing that we have to do in that moment. There's no expectation that we're producing or solving any problem. Then we get into our parasympathetic nervous system, and as that's where our creative self lives. That's where we digest our food. That's where we find those answers that might have been evading us without even looking for them, right? And that's where
mhm,
our intuition lives, and our kinder voice and our kinder self-image can
mhm,
come from that expanded place. And so we all need that in our lives daily, just to have that okay,
mhm.
here's me in touch with my internal rhythm right now, and not that problem solving brain is constantly going and driving us, right?
Exactly. And I love how you dive deeper into what meditation has done for you. And especially when you talk about doing it outside and being able to detach and have that present moment and really gaining awareness into these different thoughts that may have been going all over the place that you haven't been able to really cling to. That is so true and so powerful because, like you just said, listening to you talk about that and share how powerful that's been for you, I really relate a lot because I was just like you too. I was like, oh no, I can't do meditation. I can't sit still. I can't. It's so hard. And when you just allow yourself, to try, right? Because of course you're gonna have moments where you're not listening to maybe you're listening to a video, your mind's going off, or you're opening your eyes looking over here. It's about being kind to yourself in those moments and giving yourself that time. So I love that you elaborated on that and just mentioned how much that has done for you in just terms of trying to continuing to prioritize your mental health and really be able to give that back to others. So I
Mhm.
love that. That's such a powerful one right there. Of course, meditation. And if you guys haven't tried it, definitely get into that. There's so many free resources online and just
Yeah.
videos on YouTube and everything. You can do it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 minutes, whatever you want to do. But,
Hmm.
I want to just say thank you to you guys for being here and tuning in and just checking out Kristine's story here and just really seeing the value that she has had in terms of, when we talk about depression recovery and crisis management and really being able to tap into these skills and these tools to really take into those situations that are very challenging and overwhelming. She definitely knows what she's talking about and has been able to help many people with this. So, very thankful to have you here, Kristine, with us. So, I want to thank you. So, thank you so much for coming out. And this has been amazing. So, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Paris. I've really enjoyed this.
All right. Bye, Kristine. And bye, you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Love you and appreciate you all. Have a good one. Bye.